Hey guys, it's time for Down to the Wire on the Vegas Insider Network presented by BetMGM. I'm your host, Joe Madden. We are live here Monday to Friday from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock Eastern. You guys are going to see me in this Wednesday and Friday time slot. I'm excited for today's show. We have Dubs Anderson coming in first to talk some golf with you guys. We then will have a Joe Nelson. Now, Joe and I will be talking MLB, NFL, and some college football. But first, we've got to get to my best bet on the Diamonds today. I'm looking at the matchup between the Baltimore Orioles and the Washington Nationals. Now, the Baltimore Orioles coming in as the favorite in this. We did see them get a nice win yesterday, 4-3 over the Washington Nationals. And this one kicks off at 7:05 Eastern tonight. Now, the Baltimore Orioles, clearly the better team here, but their starting pitcher, Tyler Wells, has shown his struggles in his last 3 games. He has an ERA of 7.94, but he has an overall of 3.91 on the season. Looking for him to have a bounce back game in this one. Now, the Washington Nationals have really struggled this season. They've gone 49-92 on the season. Patrick Corbin coming out for them. His ERA is 6.3 in his last 3 starts. So he has a 3.2 ERA. I'm expecting both of these pitchers to come out stronger in this matchup. I'm going to be hitting the under in this one. I think the under 8.5 is a great way to go. You can get it over at BetMGM for -115. I think this is going to be a lower scoring game. The under has hit in all 6 of their last 6 meetings. Okay, guys, we've got to bring in our first guest, Dubs Anderson. And now you can find him on Sports Grid. Talk golf to me. Dubs, welcome to the show. How's things going in the golf world?
Happy Wednesday, Joe. Big Dubs, he's back at it again. They tried to give me an off-season with the PGA Tour. We had 2 weeks, Joe. What kind of off-season? What kind of sickos do this? Yes, that's what we do in the golf. The PGA Tour is back bigger than ever. Starting this week, the Fortinet Championship, we go in the Napa Valley of California. Somebody pour your boy a glass of Shiraz. I'm pumped up for this one, Joe. We got the Live Invitational starting on Friday in Chicago. We got the President's Cup next week over at Quail Hollow. You know your boy's going to be out there for that one. So what more do you need in your life? Yeah, it's okay to have some of these other big sports back, football, MLB, get into the playoffs. Maybe the basketball comes along. But the PGA Tour, the golf, the gift that just keeps on giving. If we can bet on it, we're going to cash tickets. Your boy was on quite the heater to finish off last season. We're going to pick up where we left off, Joe. Happy Wednesday indeed. This is my favorite day. One more sleep until the golf starts. Let's go.
You're right. One more sleep till the golf starts. I have to ask you, though, what's the drama like in the golf world right now? Are the Live and the PGA trying to get on a little bit, or is it still just complete chaos over there?
Yeah, if you want to know what the drama like, for the PGA Tour, it's the Kardashians and Ray J. That is what it is currently like. The Live Golf and the PGA Tour, they're never getting along. Now, they had every chance to come to the table and work together. No. It's not going to play out that way. And for the Live Series, they've picked up a fair bit of steam, and suddenly their tournaments are looking like genuine golf tournaments. I mean, Dustin Johnson win that last one there over in Boston. That sort of solidified saying, okay, the golfers are still going to show up and play at a very high level, which for me, Joe, that was the biggest concern. If you're playing these golfers 50 million, 100 million just to show up, why am I going to continue to try it? Why am I going to practice on my golf game when I'm already getting the bag? That wasn't the case in that last tournament. I think we see it again this week over there in Chicago. They've got some really strong fields now, only 48 golfers. But again, Cameron Smith, Joaquin Niemann, the latest defectors going there. I'm hearing there may be another big name announced this week. That's all Greg Norman needed to give that thing a bit of weight, a bit of legs, if you will. So the Live Series a couple of months ago, I was a little skeptical. But right now, from what I've seen from that last event, what I'm expecting to see this weekend, exciting times for the Live golfers and for the PGA Tour. They're trying to fix their own backyard. But again, I mean, a 2-week off season, 40-plus events on this new schedule. They're trying to pour more money into it. We've now got 20 elevated events on the PGA Tour. I think that's where the best of the best are going to remain. That's going to be the highest standard of golf. But, hey, more golf, more opportunities for the punters to back winners. I can't complain, Joe. I'm a happy boy. The more drama in golf, the better. And suddenly, it's trying to stay in that mainstream because, Dubsy's a degen golf punter, if you will. I live and breathe it, but it's always been a bit of a niche sport. I think the last couple of years, it's really grown in terms of action, in terms of bets being placed. Hopefully it stays up there and, with football and some of these other big guys coming along, we don't lose the steam that we've got over the last 6 months. Because look, controversy, drama in the news, it's been great for golf. Whether they like it or not, the PGA Tour and the old Live Series.
It absolutely is great for golf. I know it's bringing in new fans in every day. Do you think we're seeing the same caliber, though, over in the Live Series as we do see in the PGA?
No, I don't think so, Joe. I think you could probably take the top 3 or 4 guys from the Live Series and they would fare well on the PGA Tour. But if you took the bottom 10 guys on the Live Series and put them up against the bottom 10 guys on the PGA Tour, it's a non-event. And we've got 150 golfers battling it out on the PGA Tour week in, week out. So for me, the standard is still going to be the strongest on the PGA Tour. We're now getting the best from the DP World Tour from Europe, so they're not going to come out and play here in the States. For the Live Series, they're playing less events. They're playing less frequently. And again, I mean, Dustin Johnson, when he shows up and his best stuff is going to be good, thumbs up. That's all we need to see from DJ. But if he goes and hits the fishing boat, we don't see him for another 4 weeks, and he goes out there, shoots a couple of, over pars, finishes the event 2-3 over par, that's going to be concerning. I look at Phil Mickelson. I mean, I think he's about 50 plus over par through the first 4 events. That's a little scary. So I think that, the top sort of echelon of players could still mix it with the big boys here on the PGA Tour. But once we start getting down to some of these new amateur faces, some of the young guys, some of the Asian Tour players who are starting with Live, the quality's not there for me. And that's a big concern. We know they've got a 5-year plan, but what's going to be the feeder tour coming up to Live Series? What if you don't have a good season? Do you get relegated? Does someone else take your place? What happens to the young guys who played in the first couple of events and now they're playing on the DP World Tour because they've lost their position? It's funny, the DP World Tour, they don't want to punish these guys unless it's sort of, a household name, but it is what it is. And we've also got the DP World Tour going on in the background, the Italian Open this week as well, Joe, where Rory McIlroy will be one of your headliners. And he has probably been the most vocal golfer in the world the last 12 months, but he's certainly backed up with his play on the golf course as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting time, Dubs. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Everyone, the PGA and the Live Tour guys, can all play in the Masters, correct?
Correct. Right now, Joe, everyone can play in the major championships, the 4 majors, and for us, that's what it's all about. But the concern for the Live golfers is that they still don't have world rankings points with their events. So, 6 months from now, these guys are dropping outside the top 50, outside the top 60. They're not going to be invited to play at the majors. Now, guys like, Dustin Johnson, Phil Mickelson, Paddy Reed, guys who have got exemptions for the next 5 years, Bryson DeChambeau, or they've won at Augusta National, they can still continue to show, which I believe is the right thing. I don't care if you're playing Live, the PGA Tour. If you've earned your way to one of the majors, you should absolutely be allowed to peg it up. But for Greg Norman, the Live Series, they need those world ranking points. Otherwise, the golfers who are going, yay, we got paid $50 million to play, a handful of events. Suddenly, they're traveling to Asia. They're traveling over to Europe, trying to play as many events as they can to maintain their status in the world rankings, like we've seen from Patrick Reed. For them, they're still going to do it. They still got paid. They still got the bag. The missus is at home saying, you go and play as much golf as you need. We want that 50 milli, that 100 milli, but it's going to get a little tiring for those golfers. They want to get those points, play their limited schedule, get the bag, and that's it. So time will tell, Joe. I don't know if it's going to be in the next month or two where we get a decision if the Live Series is going to get those points. But ultimately, I think they will, because you look at the names they've got pegging it up. Cam Smith, Neiman, Dustin Johnson, Bryson DeChambeau, Paddy Reed, Taylor Gooch, who's still playing at a really high level. That's pretty impressive. It doesn't fit the criteria of being a 4-day event, 72 holes of stroke play with a cut, but I think, some of these bodies that are in charge, they're probably going to have to look a little favorably towards the Live Series and giving them that opportunity to get world rankings points.
Okay, so before we look into what's happening tomorrow, just one more question on this subject. Is there anyone that you've been really shocked by that has gone over to the Live or that stayed in the PGA that you thought we would have seen movement out of?
Yeah, look, I think in terms of guys who stayed on the PGA Tour, Ricky Fowler is a guy that stands out to me, because we know the Live Series is dependent on bringing eyeballs in. Ricky Fowler is a guy who absolutely moves the needle, who has that profile, and he's a guy that continues to get beat up on the PGA Tour. He struggles to hold on to his card. This is going to be his last season, week in, week out. He's playing against the best of the best in the world. I'd say, Shark, I'm Ricky Fowler. Give me 70 mil. I'm going to come play your schedule. But he didn't take the bag. Not yet anyway, Joe. He's trying to stick around the tour and prove it to himself that he can still win on the best tour amongst the best golfers in the world. So I think that's really commendable. Jason Day, another name who's sticking with the PGA Tour. I like the fact that those guys are trying to fix their golf games instead of taking the easy route and selling out. In terms of guys who jumped ship and went to the Live Series, I mean, Cameron Smith, not much of a surprise. I heard whispers the last few months, especially with the big Aussie connection over there, that Cam Smith was going to go. But, I mean, he was sort of the first golfer who leaves the PGA Tour with a lot of form. I mean, he was very close to being the player of the year. Scotty Scheffler edging him out in that department. But, I mean, he wins the Open Championship, a 3-time winner. He won the Players as well. So that's a massive punch in the ribs to the PGA Tour. Losing Cameron Smith, still one of the best golfers in the world right now as it stands. And a little disappointing. We're a week out from the President's Cup. Cameron Smith, the internationals, he was probably their ace card, and now he's not going to be pegging it up in that event. So I think that's a little sad. And guys like, Adam Scott, that's another guy. He's sort of over that 40-year of age mark, which is the sweet spot on the PGA Tour. He's won multiple times. He's won a major. What else does he have to prove on the PGA Tour? But hey, he's stuck around. He's playing in the President's Cup with the young guys. He's been playing really good golf. So hats off to Adam Scott, Ricky Fowler, Jason Day for sticking around the PGA Tour. And the biggest surprise for me was probably Cameron Smith leaving the PGA Tour in form as one of the best golfers in the world from what we've seen so far in 2022.
Yeah, it's got to be such a hard decision for these guys. Get the money now or wait and hope, bank on your game. I guess they're betting on themselves, staying with the PGA there, that they can get that money at the end of the day. But let's talk golf for tomorrow. Who are you high on, Dubs, here?
Yeah, look, so first event back, there's a lot of fresh faces coming up from the Corn Ferry Tour, a lot of journeymen, trying to get off to a hot start. We will see a couple of the players, Max Homa, Corey Connors, and Taylor Pendrith, trying to get their games dialed in for next week's President's Cup. But I think it's a great week for opportunity. Max Homa got the win here last year. It's not a long golf course. It's not a tough golf course, Joe. No one goes to the Napa Valley to play a tough golf course. They want to stroke the ego. So that's what I think we're going to see this week with the Fortinet winning score right around 20 under par. Two names you want to watch moving into the new season, and it's no surprise for anyone who bets on the golf week in, week out. Sahith Theegala, who's at 24-1, and Davis Riley, who's at 29-1. Now, it was their rookie season. They're coming off a very impressive campaign. Sahith Theegala, he's a local lad. He went to Pepperdine. He knows these bumpy California greens inside out. He's a gamer, 5 top 10s. He played in the Tour Championship. For me, he probably should have been on that Team USA going into next week's President's Cup. I think that's motivation. And Davis Riley at 29-1. When I say one of the best swings on the PGA Tour, I don't throw that out there lightly. I love his golf game. 6 top 10s next to his name last season. When you're contending that often on the PGA Tour late on Sunday, it is only a matter of time before you break down that door and get in the winner's circle. Sahith Theegala and Davis Riley, watch out for them this week to win the Fortinet Championship, and watch out for them the next 12 months here. They're going to get wins. They're going to contend at major championships, and they're going to represent their country. They are that good, Jar.
Have either of these players been able to win on this course yet, Dubs?
No, they haven't. And look, I think the edge for us this week, when we talk about, golf punting, we look at key stats, we look at form. So we can't really bring too much form into this one. When we look at course history, I love the California locals this week. The greens are really tricky to read. They get bumpier later in the afternoon. So I like a guy like Sahith, who spent a lot of time in California, down there at Pepperdine. He plays well on the West Coast swing at 24-1 amongst a weakened number. I absolutely like that. Can Max Homa defend his title here at 15-1? I just can't get behind that number. It's too short for Max Homa, who's trying to dial in his game ahead of next week. So too Hideki Matsuyama, amongst a pretty decent field with a lot of young guys trying to get off to a hot start. I can't support Max Homa going back-to-back, but I absolutely love his golf game. The next step for Max Homa is contending at major championships. Him and Sam Burns, they're 2 breakout stars for this upcoming season at the major level, which I think could kick into gear. If you're looking for a bit more value, look at a guy like Chris Kirk, a 4-time winner on the PGA Tour. You can get him at 50-1. He's played here 4 times before. He's made 3 cuts. He's a steady Eddie. He keeps it in play. Again, Silverado Resort this week, the North Course. It's only 7,100 yards, past 72. Short golf course for these PGA Tour pros. Chris Kirk, he keeps it in play. Not a long ball specialist, but the small ball warrior can absolutely factor in this week for the Fortinet Championship. If you want a bit more value in your life, just because Chris Kirk, 50-1. I said share wow, Joe. It's all about the value in the golf punting, and we'd love to cash a big fat ticket to start the brigade here.
Absolutely. Got to love that value of 50-1 there, Dubs. Thank you so much for breaking that down for us. Wish you all the best in all of your golf bets this week. Can you tell everyone where to find you and everything that you have going on?
Yes, and I got to say, approach Mr. Dubsy on socials with a bit of caution because I'm an absolute mouthpiece. You can find me at Mr. Dubsy, Dubs Answer, across all social media platforms. You'll see this big, fat, ugly head all across the Sports Grid Network, and you'll see the Golf Podcast twice weekly over there at Props Golf, and of course on social media at Talk Golf and to me. I'm an absolute parrot, Joe, but when it comes to golf punting, one of the best pound for pound in the business, and that's myself, giving myself a tap on the back. Happy Wednesday, Joe. Let's go and cash some in the PGA Tour.
Best of luck, Dubs. I'm glad you patted yourself on the back. Now, I don't have to. You guys go give him a follow, Mr. Dubsy, over on social media. Dubs, a pleasure to have you on here today.
Thanks, Joe. Talk soon.
Thank you. Okay, guys, just want to remind you, you are watching Down to the Wire on the Vegas Inside Network presented by BetMGM. And now, while I have you here, I want to tell you about our friends from BetMGM. I want you to kick off your new football season with the king of sportsbooks. Sign up for BetMGM using a bonus code VIBONUS, and your first wager is risk-free up to $1,000. That's VIBONUS, all one word, no spaces. And your first wager is risk-free up to $1,000, you guys. Head on over to betmgm.com for all terms and conditions. Okay, so that brings us to my second best bet of the night, you guys. I need to talk some Thursday night football with you here. This game is close to my heart. I'm going to tell you right away, I am an LA Chargers fan. Most of you guys know that. I'm wearing the blue for my Chargers tonight. Now, they are coming in as a 4-point underdog, taking on the Kansas City Royals. This is a fantastic AFC West rival game here. The Chargers were able to get the win in week 1 just this past Sunday over the Raiders. Now, they have a tough schedule to start out the season, both rivalry games in their first 2, but they were able to get that win. They came out strong, played well on both sides of the ball. Now, last season, we saw struggles by the LA Chargers on the defensive side of the ball, especially running, stopping that run. They added Khalil Mack here, and with Joey Bosa, these two are such a dynamic pair. I do see KC being able to get some runs on them here because they really haven't, for me, improved that run defense. But I think with the powerhouse of Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, they will be able to make some stops here on Mahomes. We saw Khalil Mack get 3 sacks in the last game against the Raiders, and Joey Bosa get 1.5. So these two are fantastic. Keenan Allen is a question mark for this game with his hamstring. I don't think we see him. Now, Justin Herbert is going to have to rely on Austin Eckler, not only as a running back, to get in that wide receiver position as well and to get those catches. We know he's a running back, but I think he's going to have to get in some open field as well. And then Mike Williams. Mike Williams is phenomenal. He should be able to break some coverage on this Kansas City secondary that did have some question marks last season. Now, for Kansas City, you guys, I am eating my words. I really did not expect them to come out as strong as we saw them in last week. So on Sunday, they absolutely destroyed the Cardinals. It was 44-21, I believe the final score of that one was. And Mahomes, without Tyreek Hill, there was no question that he absolutely played phenomenal. I was worried about him. I really did think that he would find some struggles and that he wouldn't be able to move the ball around as much as he did. Now, Travis Kelce was a huge target for him in that last game. And I think that the Chargers will need to find a way to stop Travis Kelce, but there's still so many other weapons here from Mahomes. He showcased it. He's able to get things done. When I look at this one on BetMGM, we're seeing the Chargers come in as the 4-point dog. Kansas City, of course, a 4-point favorite, and we've got a total of 54. Now, this total seems a little low when we look at it. When we have seen these two teams match up, the Chargers average like 32 points against Kansas City. And we know Kansas City and Mahomes are going to put the points on the board. I am loving the over 54. Shop that line over at BetMGM because it's great value at minus 110, you guys, for that over. I also lean on the Chargers plus the points here because this game is going to be tight. I think these quarterbacks go back and forth in this one. Now, when we look at just some stats for this game, it's really interesting to see that they have been tight because Kansas City normally comes in as the favorite. The Chargers are 3-1-1 against the spread in those last 5 meetings. We've also seen success for the road team going 16-5-1 against the spread in the last 22. So this game is going to be a really good one, you guys. Again, I'm going to take the LA Chargers plus the points, but I think the best bet is taking that over 54. Go shop those lines over on BetMGM. Now, it is time for our second guest. I have Joe Nelson, Vegas Insider Handicapper on the show. Joe, welcome.
Hi, Joe. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's great to have two Joes on one show. I'm excited for this. It should be a lot of fun. How long have you been with Vegas Insider now, Joe?
At least 15 years, maybe longer than that. It's been a while. So it's been a great place to be a part of with a lot of good tools and resources and hopefully some winners for everyone.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited to have you here. We're going to be talking MLB, college football, and NFL. So let's jump right into it. In MLB for tonight, we have the Milwaukee Brewers taking on the St. Louis Cardinals. Now the Brewers coming in here as a favorite. We got a low total in this one. What are you liking here, Joe?
Yeah, I thought we should cover some baseball. I know everyone's kind of turned the page to football, but an exciting 3 weeks still to go. Big win for Milwaukee last night, 8-4. McCutchen with a 3-run homer with 2 outs in the 5th was the difference in the game. They're back within 7 of the NL Central. Probably not realistic to chase down the Cardinals for that one, but looks like San Diego could lose again this afternoon. So 1.5 games behind the Padres for that final wild card spot. I do like St. Louis in this game, however. It's Wainwright Burns, 2 great pitchers. They had this exact same matchup, and Milwaukee was even bigger favorite about a month ago. Wainwright had nine innings, 1 run allowed, 3 hits allowed, no decision. They lose in extra innings, but he's been fantastic at home. He's only allowed 5 home runs over 100 innings in St. Louis, which is pretty important with the Brewers being number 3 in home run rate. Burns has been a little shaky. He still has a really good season line, still one of the best strikeout pitchers in baseball, but since the All-Star break, 4.47 ERA, he's allowed 3 or more runs 6 of his last 9. He's got really good numbers against St. Louis, but those home run and walk rates have been up. And this is a Cardinals team that, since they played a month ago, has been on a tear. A little down slope for their offense the last couple days, but 820 OPS the last 4 weeks. 5.7 runs a game, 47 home runs in those games. They have not lost consecutive home games since before the All-Star break, losing 2 in a row to the Dodgers in mid-July, 20-5 at home since then. So I like St. Louis. Anytime getting a plus price with them at home, I think is worth a look.
Yeah, you got to love riding with a home dog for that plus money here, Joe. I have to ask you, when you're handicapping the games, how much are you looking at those home and away splits?
I probably do less than most. I take a lot of road teams, but there are certain teams and certain pitchers that do have a pretty big disparity in the home and road numbers. So you have to keep that in mind with certain pitchers. But for the most part, I don't think it's maybe quite as important as it's maybe thought of overall.
Okay, well, best of luck in that game. We're going to turn to college football now. We've seen a couple of weeks. We're going into week 3. What have you thought so far of the season, Joe?
Well, it was certainly a wild week last week. A lot of big upsets, several double-digit underdogs winning outright, changing the complexion in a couple conferences. So, every year it is exciting. Would have been quite a game changer last week if Texas has been able to hold on there. But it's been a fun start to the season. I think we've got some more good games this week.
Yeah, talking about good games, we've got Liberty taking on Wake Forest here. Both these teams have won both of their first game, but only Wake's been able to cover the spread in both. What are you liking for Liberty versus Wake?
Yeah, this game a little bit off the main radar. You've got Liberty, who's been a fantastic team the last couple of years, but they're now replacing Malik Willis with the Titans now. Caden Salter, who's come into play, isn't nearly the polished passing threat that Willis was. He is a mobile quarterback and has some potential there. Liberty's 2-0, as he said, but they've had 9 turnovers go their way. They've been outrushed in both of their games. So I think it's going to be tough for them to keep up with Wake Forest. I don't like a situation where they would fall behind and be forced to throw a little bit more, which against Wake Forest, a team that scored 41 points per game last season, that could certainly happen. Big news for Wake Forest, Sam Hartman expected to be out with a medical issue, came back last week. They look great. I think that's really a big boost for them. One concern people might look at with Wake Forest this week, they've got Clemson next week. But under Clausen, they're 6-1 before playing Clemson. They've had great success as a favorite of this magnitude. 5-1-1 the last 7 times they played an FBS team as a favorite of 10 or more. And Clausen overall has a really good home record. So I think this is a game where Wake Forest is going to be able to pull away, and Liberty may not get the turnover luck they've had the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, without that turnover luck, it is going to be a hard game for Liberty here in this one. Now, talking about that look-ahead spot, how much are you weighing for certain games? Like, we know the Ohio State and the Michigan games. I think more weight comes on those. But in a situation like this with Wake taking on Clemson, does it enter in a tiny bit for you?
A little bit. I think with the major conference teams, it's maybe less of an issue. You have deep conferences in the SEC, ACC, Big Ten, where you have a good opponent every week. You can't really get too high or low for anything. I think if you saw a team like Liberty or one of the smaller conference teams get an opportunity early in the season against a big opponent, one of their major schools in their state or something like that, I think those can be more dangerous situations.
Okay, well, let's look at the second game that you're liking on the college football slate for Saturday, September 17th. We have Penn State taking on Auburn. Now, Penn coming in here on the road as a favorite. We've got a low total of 48.5. Where are you going with this one?
Yeah, really big game on the schedule, I think, for both teams. This was a big early season game last year. Neither team turned out to have a great year, so it wound up not being all that important of a game. Penn State won that one by 8. But it was a really close game yardage-wise. Auburn had a really big rushing edge in that game and was on the doorstep to score with a chance to tie the game late, but didn't get it done. Penn State had that close game with Purdue. I would say, most of that game, they didn't really look like the better team, but they got 2 quick scores right before halftime and then that great drive at the end of the game to steal a win from Purdue. They allowed over 400 yards. Now they're facing the same price at Auburn, which can be a pretty daunting venue. I think a lot of people might look at what happened last week and say, side with Penn State here. Penn State blew out an Ohio team that's usually pretty good in the MAC. Auburn, underwhelming game last week. It was a 3-point game with San Jose State. They pulled it out, but never came close to covering a big spread. But I do think the rushing advantage will be with Auburn in this one. Penn State led the nation in run D in 2019, but they've gotten worse each year since under Franklin. And I think it's a big revenge game. With Harsin in his second year at Auburn, I mean, there's going to be some ups and downs. Finley isn't the most reliable quarterback, but it is still a rare home underdog price here. The only times Auburn was a home underdog last season were to Georgia and Alabama. Much bigger underdog than they will be this week, but they are 18-11 the last 29 as a home underdog, and that goes back over 20 years, so it's not something that comes up too often.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have seen this total actually drop. It's now down to 47. I'm seeing this line. Do you think that we see a lower scoring one in this, Joe, or do you have any thoughts on the total?
Yeah, I would probably lean that way. I think both quarterbacks are a little unreliable. You could see some missed opportunities for both teams. And I think Auburn especially is going to want to lean on the running game and not turn this into a higher scoring game.
I can't wait to see how these games play out on Saturday. the NFL kicked off last Thursday. We had an incredible week one. The dogs were barking so loud. I'm interested to see if you like any dogs for this coming weekend. Let's look at Sunday's first game. The Washington Commanders taking on the Detroit Lions now. Washington getting a nice win in their first game out. They're 1.5-point dog in this one, taking on the Lions, who did lose that opening game. What are you thinking in here?
Yeah, you don't see the Lions as the favorite all that often, but I like Washington here. I was pretty impressed with their first game. I know it was kind of a back and forth game, and Wentz did have a couple turnovers to let Jacksonville back in that one. Pretty much every game in the NFL is a back and forth game that could come down to the wire. So, and I am a little higher on Jacksonville than most people, so I was impressed with Washington. I think the narrative with Wentz is that he had a terrible year last year, but he was 14th in QB rating, 9th in QBR with the Colts. Struggled those final two games as they fell out of the playoffs, but it's a good wide receiver group with Washington. They were really good on third downs last week, and with Wentz's mobility, I think that's something they'll continue this year. Detroit, they wound up covering. They came back. They did the exact same thing in week one last year against San Francisco, fell way behind, came back to cover in that one. But I think, they were 40 minutes into the game. They're down 17. They had less than 150 yards at that point, so I don't really believe in their full game numbers being all that meaningful as they were way behind. DeAndre Swift had a huge game last week, but you had just 5.8 yards per attempt from Goff. I just don't think there's enough in the passing game for the Lions to keep up in this one. And it's just kind of a rare price to see the Lions favorite here. I know they have a lot of believers this year, but until I see a couple wins in the win column, I'm probably going to look to go against them more weeks than not.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on my thoughts of the Lions as well. I want to ask you about Washington's defense. What did you see out of them in week one? Are you thinking they're going to be a better defensive team than we saw last season? Because the hopes were so high for them last year. And of course, we saw Chase Young go out. We saw them have these struggles. Do you think this team can pull it together defensively? Or do you think that Carson Wentz and the offense is going to have to hold this team together?
I think it's probably going to be a middle of the pack defense. The expectations, like you said, were really high last year, and again, we're dealing with some injuries for them this year. I think overall the NFC East so far maybe could be a little bit better. I think a lot of people like the Eagles this year, as I do, and the Giants with the nice win last week. So maybe they'll face some tougher games, but I guess you do have Dallas severely downgraded at this point. So I think they're a good, but probably not a top of the pack defense this year.
Okay, well, we have another game that's going to be interesting. The Arizona Cardinals taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, the Raiders coming in here as the favorite after losing in week one to the LA Chargers. The Arizona Cardinals also getting the loss to KC. Do you think the Cardinals have what it takes with Kyler Murray to get the win here to pull off an upset, or do you think this is Las Vegas all day?
It's a bit of a leap of faith, but I prefer Arizona here. I think the price is adjusting a little too high, and I'm just going to assume that Arizona just played their worst and they ran into a Kansas City team that is, one of the teams to beat this year. They were only dogged by 5 or more 3 times last season, Arizona was, and they went 3-0 straight up in those games. They were 8-1 straight up on the road last year, so I don't think this team is going to fall too far from last year. I think they did overperform a little bit last season, but I think it's still going to be a competitive group. And I think you just have to kind of throw last week out the window. For the Raiders, the offensive line is certainly a worry. Carr was sacked 5 times last week. He had 3 interceptions. There's some great offensive weapons. Devontae Adams had a great debut for the Raiders in the box score, but it was a team trailing most of the way. They were down double digits most of the second half until getting that late score. So it's a big price for the Raiders. They're going to be a popular play on team, so they're going to face inflated numbers. They're 0-5 against the spread. The last 5 times they've been a favorite or 5 or more, including the only instance last season was a 20-9 loss to the Bears. So I'm going to take a leap of faith with Arizona and think they got a terrible performance out of the way. A lot of overreactions can happen in week one. You remember last year, week one, the Titans got blown out by 25 to this Cardinals team. The Packers lost by 35. Those 2 teams wound up the number 1 seeds. So I think Arizona can put it together and stay in this one.
Yeah, very good point here. We do see a big overreaction by bettors in week 2 from based on what they saw in week 1. What are your thoughts here, though, on Kyler Murray? We know that there was all that debate around him with his contract and putting into that he needed to spend more time on film study.
Yeah, it was kind of a bizarre situation, and maybe there are some things within the Arizona organization that are just going to be out of sync this year, and it's a collapse season for them. It's a possibility. But I think he's still really talented. He still does so many things for you with being able to pick up first downs. So I'm certainly willing to give him a pass on last week and think that he can still have a pretty good season.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell you, that's everyone is talking about that, watching that game. People were joking, well, he needs to do more film study. So I feel for the guy, you know, that's something that you'd hate to be leaked if that was part of your contract. But let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, both these teams got the win. The Vikings came out so impressive over the Green Bay Packers. We've seen the Packers just having those struggles. I don't think Aaron Rodgers has his ability just to get to those wide receivers, doesn't have his target right now. But for Minnesota, they've had so many changes. It looks like changes for the better. What are your thoughts on this game versus the Eagles? We know the Eagles saw good performance out of Hurts. They got the win there. What are you liking?
Yeah, I think these are two of the ascending teams in the NFC. I think they're teams that should be on the short list of teams that can make some noise in the NFC playoffs. I think the reaction with Minnesota is maybe a little severe. I mean, they had a lot of things go right in a huge opening game with Green Bay. Packers early had that bomb to Christian Watson that was dropped. That would have been a sure touchdown. They had a goal line stand by the Vikings when it was a 7-0 game that it easily could have been 7-7. Out of the half, Packers had a productive drive going and fumbled. Another red zone failure late in the game for Green Bay. So I think a lot of things went right for Minnesota in that game with the Packers team that I think is going to take a few weeks to get in sync with all the changes. Also had some injuries on their offensive line as well. One thing that I look at with Minnesota, you look at the numbers, 6.5 yards per play, which is fantastic. Jefferson had a huge game. Cousins was very efficient, but they still only scored 23 points. And that's kind of what they've done the last couple of years under Zimmer, is where they would have great offensive numbers. They would rank very highly in a lot of offensive categories, but the scoring wouldn't be there. The wins wouldn't be there. Last week, third downs were a problem for 13 on third downs. The run defense, I think, is still going to be pretty vulnerable. Green Bay had 6.2 yards per carry last week, even though they were in a situation where they really weren't able to lean on the running game because they were trailing the whole game. Philadelphia, a really good rushing team. Hurts adding to that with, I believe, 90 yards last week, 216 rushing yards for the Eagles. I think it's a tough matchup for Minnesota now going on the road after a huge home game. Now they go to Philadelphia for a big primetime home game for the Eagles, an Eagles team with a lot of potential this year to be a really good team. I don't look at this type of thing too often, but we all know Cousins on Monday night has not had good success. I think it's at 2-9 right now. So I might side with the Eagles on this one. I know Minnesota looked really good, but when you have an Eagles team that I think can be a serious NFC contender, just a short price at home in a big home game, I think that's the side I'll be leaning this week.
Yeah, it's interesting to see this live movement with the Philadelphia Eagles opening as a 3-point favorite, now down to 1.5. 62% of the money I'm seeing is on the Minnesota Vikings, which if the public is all over the Vikings, you got to wonder if the Eagles do take this win at home. How long do you think this stigma sticks with quarterbacks? You touched on Kirk Cousins not being able to win those primetime games, 2-9 in primetime. At what point does he get over that hurdle?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to probably always stay with him, even if he has some success. And he's obviously been a really good quarterback the last few years with Minnesota. We're all just looking for things looking for statistics and things to pin onto players to develop storylines and stuff. And it's unfortunate that he's kind of been saddled with that. A lot of the Monday night losses early in his career were playing as an underdog versus much better teams. And, that's going to happen to your record no matter who you are.
Absolutely. Well, these should be some great games. Again, that game, you guys, is a Monday night at 8:30 Eastern. Joe, we know we can find your picks over on the VegasInsider.com website, but where else can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as active on Twitter as I probably should be, but I'll try to pick that up at Nelly Joe Nelson. you can check out my newsletter at nellysports.com, and I'll definitely have some picks up this week on Vegas Insider, coming off a really good first week in the NFL on VI.
Okay, Joe. Well, thank you so much for joining me here. You guys make sure you go over and check out his picks, like I said, on vegasinsider.com. Go give him a follow on Twitter at Nelly Joe Nelson. Joe, an absolute pleasure to meet you here today.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Best of luck this week.
Thank you. Okay, you guys, again, you are watching Down to the Wire on the Vegas Insider Network, presented by BetMGM. It is time for today's handicapper heat check, presented by vegasinsider.com, your home of the best expert picks in the business since 1997. Today, we are recognizing Reno Johnny, who can be found on Twitter at Reno Johnny. Reno Johnny has been just picking these gems in MLB as of late. He went 2-0 yesterday and is up 3,119 units overall this season. You can take advantage of Reno Johnny's picks by visiting vegasinsider.com/picks or by clicking on his MLB promo on the Vegas Insider homepage. That is your Vegas Insider handicapper heat check. You guys, stay hot, bettors. Okay, for a recap of my bets today, my two bets that I have out, you've got to get this one in right away. The Orioles and the Nationals tonight. I'm going to be riding the under 8.5. You can get that over at BetMGM at -115. I am also looking at the Thursday night football game between the LA Chargers and the Kansas City Chiefs. I love the over 54 in this one, and a lean on the Chargers plus the points in a game that I think is going to be a battle to the end. But you guys, thank you so much for joining me here on Down to the Wire. I will see you guys back here on Friday, but the show is Monday to Friday at 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern. I'm Joe Madden. It was a pleasure being here with you guys today. Until next time, keep smiling and let's make some freaking money.